Hello, welcome to the Lean Into Artcast, the show where a couple of visual storytellers get together, take a walk around a topic, try to dissect it as best they can. Well, actually, usually nowadays we start out by trying out the idea and the topic, then we dissect it the best we can. Oh, I'm getting some, there we go. Sorry, I had my live stream on my desktop, and all of a sudden I heard myself talking to myself. Who was talking to himself? Jerzy Droz, cartoonist and teaching artist. The other guy who was not talking to himself was...
Who's talking to himself? I think everybody's talking to themselves on the inside. I am Rob Stenzinger, a interactive storyteller, UX designer, game person, and co-host with you, Jerzy. And how are you doing?
I'm okay. You know, this is our first time doing the new streaming from YouTube rather than from Hangouts on Air. Mm-hmm. And we're doing something a little bit more ambitious this time, too, in that we're going to be doing some live inking in a second, like inking on paper, not inking on, like, screen shares or anything like that. Because why? Why would we be doing inking on the show? Why are we going to start with doing inking demos? Because Inktober is upon us. The season of creative challenges is upon us, isn't it, Rob?
Yeah, this time of year, it must be sort of the inner desire for the harvest of creativity is in all of us. We're like, I have this crop of ideas, and now I want to bring them home and stock up for the winter. At least in the northern hemisphere. I don't know why they do it in the southern hemisphere this time of year, but but there's a lot of really fun and interesting things that are out there as optional choices for people who like to make stuff or are thinking about diving into it. And any of these creative challenges, such as 24-hour comic day, NaNoWriMo, we've provided some creative challenges this time of year as well. Things like Art Sound Off, things like a few years ago, 30 classes in 30 days, 30 characters in 30 days. You jump into a thing. And you're not alone, and you make stuff and have some adventures and get to see a lot of things emerge.
And we're going to start by doing a demo of some of the ways we've approached this, tools we've used, materials we've used, and then afterwards we're going to talk about like framing up, like, you know, what have we done in the past, how has it affected how we're going to approach future art challenges, and ways to think about, you know, why take on an art challenge like this, and if so, how structured should it be? How unstructured should it be? We'll get to all that in a second. But before we go there, Rob, we got to thank our sponsors. Who are our sponsors? Our sponsors happen to be us, because we do other stuff besides this show. We work as we said at the top, you know, designers, illustrators, storytellers, cartoonists, teachers. And so this is the chance for us to say, you know, since we put on the show, we sponsor the show, and we make other things that we would like you to know about, just as a sponsor would, right? Mm-hmm. And the first one is, I'll talk about my comic, Boulder and Fleet Adventures for Hire, which is a webcomic at boulderandfleet.com. You can also read it on Instagram, at Boulder and Fleet on Instagram, on Twitter, at Boulder and Fleet, and you can read it natively on Google Plus as well. There's an album there, and I've been told that in Google Photos, the reading experience is quite nice. Oh, it's also on Tapastic, if you use Tapastic. And what is it about? As you can see on the screen, if you're watching on the screen, it's funny animals and rock creatures, and it's my love note to Saturday morning sort of cartoon storytelling, adventure storytelling. Bear and a bird go on adventures, run into all sorts of troubles, and try to solve the troubles in a harmonious way rather than in a, you know, gun-toting way. Rob, you make a game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I make a game called This Panda Needs You. And well, why does this little panda need you? Because there are these blocks that the panda keeps encountering, and a cloud keeps on knocking them over, and you get to enjoy a puzzle of getting them stacked back up again. Maybe they fall because it's a little bit of a physics and shape and pattern recognition sort of puzzle game. And once you get it right, then the panda gets to move on and find a new puzzle. And there's like over 50 of them in the game. It's really an all ages kind of thing, but it's definitely in sort of an early skills, pattern, shape, color recognition kind of thing. And but definitely no limit there. People of all ages I've seen enjoy it. So you can pick that up for iOS, and it works on iPhone and iPad, and go to this-panda.com, and you'll get the link to the App Store.
But supposing that you've heard those two pitches, and you're like, well, those are all very nice, and it's nice that you guys have evidence of your skill set and that you can ship things. Good for you. You've established your bona fides, as they say.
Hmm.
But I'm really here for what you guys talk about. The way you guys unbox topics is what's really interesting to me. Well, then we have something for you too, which is leanintoart.com/workshops, where we have a whole bunch of self-contained videos with a really laser-focused topic in mind. They're essentially like online classes that you can, consume at your own in your own time and at your own pace. Comics Fundamentals 4-session series, which these are all lessons that I've taught in my classrooms for the past almost 10 years now. The TAM, sound design workshop, 4 hours of theoretical approach to sound design as well as practical approach of designing word balloons, thought balloons, sound elements. And then Rob's got Storyteller's UI tools. So if you ever thought about how do I make the comics, how do I present the comics, how do I think about the way people are going to interact with my comics user interface, or making video games from your creator-owned comics. All of these are at leanintoart.com/workshops. You can download them at a price of your choosing, which means you can even choose 0 if you want to, or you can say like, hey, I think this is worth something. $1, $2. Every buck helps. So we thank everybody who has gone to all these different places, whether they're talking about Boulder and Fleet or This Panda Needs You or leanintoart.com/workshops. Thanks for helping spread the word about it, and thanks for everybody who has supported us by participating in those projects. Right?
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much.
All right. So are we ready to go on the ground and do some drawing?
Yeah, this is what it's all about. I mean, so inherently we're picking a road and picking a specific flavor of creative challenge. Inktober is sort of our emphasis, right? And with that, it's the sort of creative limitations that are part of that challenge are, producing a physical drawing with ink, and it's not much more. Controlling or defined or some big checklist, but it's definitely putting some ink on paper, and that'll be what we demo. And I'll be curious to see what kind of tools and techniques you use.
I feel obliged to bring people up to speed as to what Inktober is if they haven't seen it or haven't heard of it. It's at mrjakeparker.com/Inktober. And it's just a 31-day challenge in the month of October. You're challenged to it's really low risk. I mean, it's like here's the rules on Jake Parker's site. Inktober rules. Number 1, make a drawing in ink. You can do a pencil underdrawing if you want. Number 2, post on your blog or Tumblr, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, Flickr, Pinterest, or just pin it to your wall. Number 3, hashtag it with Inktober for repeat. So it's a way for you. It's designed to be a low risk way for you to check in on your ink drawing. And there's a lot of different ways you can approach it depending on what you want to accomplish through it. But the big idea is just to get into the rhythm and habit of doing something. We talked about this in the show before, but this time we're actually going to do some demonstrations of how we approach it. And I'm going to do a little bit of quick inking, and then Rob's going to do a little bit of quick inking. And then the second half of the show, we'll talk about the whys of this thing. So you ready to switch over to inking, Rob?
Yeah, I am ready.
And here's a big sneak peek. This is actually a character design I was working on for the new Boulder and Fleet story.
Ooh.
Yeah, Stag Beetle. Okay, so first let me start by saying, my apologies if you're only listening to the audio. I'll do my best to describe what I'm doing, and Rob will be doing color commentary as well. But this was actually a drawing that I did that I scanned and then turned into blue line and then printed out on Bristol. Reason being that if I make a goof, I can always, switch to the next one, right?
Mm-hmm. That's kind of like making a backup for electronic files. You've created a safe spot to come back to.
Right. Yeah. Yes. This is and also, at least in my case, I'm thinking that I might want to try different inking approaches, like different styles. I might use a more brittle style or a more smooth style and see, compare and contrast. But most of the time, my Inktober sketches tend to be drawn with pencil first, and I'll start with my tools real quick that I typically use. So here's my really fancy Transformers pencil bag that I got from Dang Argyle, local artisan here in Ann Arbor, Michigan. I actually provided the materials. This is from an old Transformer sheet set that I had. So typically I start with, Pentel twist erase pencil with Oh, here it is. Pentel. You see this? Let me get in the shot. There
Yeah,
we
I
go.
do. Oh, interesting.
So they're
Yeah,
just like
that's
mechanical
that
blue lead.
Yep.
Just blue lead. You can get it at most art supply stores. I get mine from dickblick.com, and it's like $1.20 or something a tube of 12 leads. Gets put in this, and then I can sketch in non-photo. Oh, this is my graphite pencil. So sketch in non-photo blue, right?
So what kind of pencil? What kind of lead holder are you using for that thing?
This is the Pentel Twist Erase. They don't actually make this anymore.
That is one of the precious in your archive or hoard, if you will, right?
Right, right. When I found out that they were discontinuing these pencils, I bought like 20 because I was like, I want this to last. It's my favorite pencil in the whole world, and I've tried other pencils. I don't like them. I love the way this one feels, love the balance, love the heft. So I got as many as I could, knowing that this batch was going to have to last me the rest of my life. They still make the Twist Erase, but they put all sorts of like rubber doodads all over it, which I don't like. So usually I start with those, and then for erasing, I have a Pentel Click Erase. We've seen these, right?
Oh yeah.
Got the white plastic eraser inside. And you can buy refills, which I carry around with me. Oh, here's a refill, but it's like covered in schmutz from being around a whole bunch of pencils. And that's gross. Also, one of these, just like a white plastic eraser. I really like those. So that'd be my penciling tools. Inking. Here are my favorite pens right now. So this is the Pentel Color Brush, which I've been using for many years. You can tell by looking at it. It's pretty worn.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's refillable. So like I just get this whole
And
bit
Pentel
here.
has a multiple brushes in their sort of ink cartridge based brush pen line, right?
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, and it really their names are similar, but they are totally different products.
Yeah,
So,
the Color Brush has a fairly large tip. Let me see if I can get it in the shot. Compared to other pens. So I use this for like thick lines, and I also like tend to dry it out to do some of the dry brush effects. The other one in my arsenal I've been using for many years now is the Pentel Pocket Brush. This is a popular one. Slightly smaller brush for doing more detailed stuff. Newer ones. Oh, and then here is the Pentel Stylo, which is, I love this pen. I didn't think I would. I thought I would hate it, but I love it. It's basically like a plastic disposable crow quill. Like this white tip is like a crow quill tip. So
yeah,
you use a little bit of
pretty cool.
A little bit of pressure gives you thicker lines. And then this is the Food Brush. Fude? F-U-D-E. I don't know how to pronounce it, but it's even thinner and more detailed than the Color Brush, but it's got like the weight and heft of the Pocket Brush, or the Color Brush rather. It's thinner than the Pocket Brush, but it feels more like the Color Brush, right? And that's what I like about it. And this one I just got and was just in the beginning process of trying out, and this is the Kuretake Sumi refillable brush pen.
You're kidding me. When I unzip my cute cartoon pencil bag, we're gonna have a similar conversation. Not
Why?
quite the same, but we have very similar choices for pens here. That's all.
That's well, they're pretty nice pens and they're popular. All right, so
Yeah.
let's do some demo stuff, huh? Let's ink this beetle guy.
It's a stink beetle or stank beetle. I don't know.
Stag beetle.
Stag.
So,
Sorry. Ooh, that's offensive. I called
No,
it.
he is stinky. Hence the lines, right?
Yeah.
He got stink lines on him. He's a stinky stag beetle. But I didn't want to go the stereotypical route of it, like a dung beetle, right? I didn't want to just
Okay.
meet
Okay.
expectations. But
Yeah.
all right, so this guy's actually like pretty dry already. So I'm gonna leave this guy alone. I'm gonna go with my Kuretake Sumi to do my contours.
So those can do similar jobs essentially.
Yeah, but I usually, depending on the size of the brush, and also like, so these guys, the Pocket and the Sumi, the Kuretake Sumi, they are pressure fed, so the ink is just always being pushed into the brush, so it's kind of hard to dry them out and get dry brush effects. Whereas these guys, the Fude and the Color Brush, are fed by me squeezing on this chamber. So I can actually let the ink run out and get a nice dry effect, which is great for getting some textures that I like in my inking.
I seriously did not know that. That's really cool.
It's something I like tripped upon by accident, like many things I've learned about making comics, trial and error.
But I mean, those are pretty different, different performance characteristics of those brush pens. Because comparing them on the shelf, I never quite. I never picked up the color, the pocket color.
So the pocket brush is this guy,
Right.
and the
That's
color
so
brush is the one that you squeeze.
it's just color brush. Okay. Yeah, the color brush. I never made it into my cart because I thought, well, they're just so similar. But
Yeah,
that's really
but they're
good to know.
different in the way that the ink is fed, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which gives
that's,
you a different kind of control.
Mm-hmm. So I'm inventorying some possibilities for this Inktober, to try out.
So usually this isn't every time, but most of the time when I'm doing these sketches, I start with the contour, like so.
Mm-hmm.
Contour meaning the outer lines, the stuff that's defining the outer volume of the thing,
Hmm.
not the inner details yet.
And yeah, you're working on a very tight underdrawing too.
Yeah, my underdrawing. You've seen my pencils before. Many people have. If you've joined the Boulder and Fleet Patreon, I actually share my high-res pages there, the layered versions. You can see how tight my pencils are, and they tend to be very tight. Well, I've been told that they're tight. I didn't think they were all that tight, but I guess they are.
Yeah, I am in the camp of agreeing with that, which that is
I think
what
the
I'm seeing
tightness,
is.
though, for me, the tightness allows me to be really quick with my inks.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm not just tracing, I'm embellishing, but I don't have to guess as much, and I don't have to interpret as much. Like I'm
Yeah,
really just
there's less. Yeah, there's less information to be added right now, and you are emphasizing
right. So like
and
now, all I have to do is
clarifying.
really focus on just like texture and
Mm-hmm.
like communicating weight and volume and shadow and stuff. So yeah, my inks tend to go really fast. Like I just finished a project for the new Captain Seriously and the Supermaster Sentinels, and this is gonna make you mad, Rob. This is gonna make you really mad.
Oh
Some of those
boy.
pages took me an hour and a half to ink.
If I wasn't podcasting, I'd flip this table.
Ow, my teeth.
I,
That
I
for
literally
you.
made a bet in my head, and you like seriously undercut it by at least 2/3. So okay, I'm very happy for you. In other
But
words,
part of it was I penciled really tight, so the pencils took like,
mm,
almost double the time.
okay,
They'll make me mad. All right, so now I've got my contour done, or rough, almost done, right? So now I'm going to go ahead and start working out the texture stuff. Now, typically what I would have, like in a sketchbook, I can actually pull up a sketchbook. Did I do it in the sketchbook? I did not. I got to do it in another sketchbook. Here's an
okay,
old one. Like, often I'll use like another page in the book as like a blotting page, right? Like, see with this, how I'll like use this to like scrub around to like dry out my brush, and that's how I get some of those dry brush effects with these brush pens.
oh my gosh, it seriously is a tool that I've looked at, like your stream and other artists that are using the what I thought was essentially the same sort of pocket brush. That I mean, yeah, that's fantastic. You just you get that
So yeah, I'll just
get the
like,
bulk of the ink out of that thing, and then
yep, I won't press the chamber. I'll just like let it dry out by just brushing around like on a separate sheet of paper.
I feel kind of silly that I didn't understand this, and I've poked around at that for a few years now, and not incessantly, but this is pretty awesome to learn.
Well, to be fair, this is me trying to make do something that another tool does better, right? Like if I was using like a traditional like sable brush, it'd be a lot easier to do that because you have even more control over how much ink goes on that brush.
Mm-hmm.
But it's really hard to carry around a sable brush and inkwell with this
And a
rig,
whole
right?
yes,
this is very portable. That's why I'm sort of like trying to coax a tool to do something that it's not really designed to do. But I don't know. I don't know if anybody else does it this way. Is all I'm saying. But I've been told by some other artists who've seen me do it, like, why don't you just use a real brush? Another thing that I've grown, like, sort of, and this is me just being an old guy who's used a lot of different tools over the years, is I used to really love fussing with my tools. I used to have like back in the art and story days, I used to talk about rapidograph pens, those really fancy they're like mechanical pens, refillable, and they require a lot of maintenance. And I used to really like how guys talk about muscle cars. It's like, oh yeah, I gotta clean out the rapidographs. I was really proud of that.
Sunday, cleaning the rapidograph.
And now it's just like, does it work? Is it easy? Does it travel well? That's really all I'm interested in now. I'm so lazy. I just want to get the work done. I don't want to like flex my muscles and my ink stains at people.
Well, the exuberance is great when you're falling in love with the tool, but now you have a more efficient relationship. So, yeah.
I guess so. Yeah. Efficiency is part of it. Okay, so now color brush. This guy has a little bit thicker tip, so I like to. You can see what I'm doing, right? Yeah.
Yeah, totally. It's you're sort of draining a bit of that ink from the brush.
I'm also flattening the tip a little bit. Like when I put it away, I always roll it to get the tip back into shape, but I try to flatten the tip to get a nice wide brush on this so that I can do this kind of texture stuff.
The closest I've come to being able to do anything like that is literally letting the Pentel Pocket Brush be almost completely out of ink, and then it functions in that way for a very brief amount of time.
Yeah. You can make the color brush do it for, a pretty long time.
Yeah.
I also really like this part of it because this is the part where it's like mistakes happen and I have to live with them unless I really want to break out whiteout or whatever. And so when I'm doing this part where I'm adding texture and stuff, it's kind of fun to scumble around and like just see what the pen wants to do, as dumb as that might sound. I don't want it to sound too metaphysical, but it's like sort of, this part feels more like a conversation with the materials than like me having command over the materials, right?
Right. You're not staring at the page and then at the molecular level transforming it into lines.
Like Lawnmower Man, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if I'd be too into drawing if we were essentially Lawnmower Man. The late 90s VR
which is one of my favorite movies to like reference. It always sparks delight when I reference that film because like it does seem like it's one of those ones that we all remember, but it's not like super in the consciousness,
It's pretty bonkers, and and honestly, to its credit, there's not much like it in the world. So that's something.
So now it's like
that little pocket of your brush prep area on the page.
Yeah,
that looks cool too. It looks like feathers.
Yeah, somebody actually mentioned on Twitter when they saw when I posted a picture of one of my sketches, they saw this little bit here, and they were like, "Hey, it looks like really." At least in the drawing I posted, like it looks like you got a cool landscape up there. What is that? I'm like, no, it's just my scumble area. So I don't know how much time I've spent on this. I don't want to belabor my section of this part.
Oh no, this is awesome. It's so by using. Because essentially, I mean, you could be going flat black with a tool that would just really, drop it on the page pretty quickly. But there are these small character lines with character in the midst of the black, and it's not like a skipped thing. It's like a textured zone where it's like it's like nothing's completely black.
Right, and I want this guy to look like bumpy and dirty. He's a stinky beetle, and I want him to, look like Reek. I want him to look like somebody you don't want to have lunch with. Right?
He's gritty. Yep.
Yeah.
And
he may be the nicest guy in the whole world, but man, if he's sitting across you at the lunch table, you'd be like, yikes.
Right.
So yeah.
Tough
So I
to,
wanted the blacks to not be like too crisp and too polished. I wanted them to look a little bit like little bits of his
no, because actually
carapace.
they would look clean. It would actually make this beetle look like um, glossy and likely washed.
Right. And so get the stink lines.
Oh, yeah,
So
those are off camera, but yeah.
another thing I might. Oh, is that off camera? Sorry. Thank you. So another thing I might do at this point is I might do like a little box behind him, just to make him
Oh,
pop a little bit more, and then I would go in with,
oh wow, cool.
fill it in, just to give it like the appearance of dimension and make it look like there's some presentation going on here.
Putting a shape behind the characters, that does that a lot.
Yeah, you'll notice a lot of my sketches that I posted on Instagram during past Inktobers, and also when I was doing character explorations for Boulder and Fleet, I do this a lot just because, I don't know, I like the way it looks. I'm not going to present this as any kind of John Lasseter level storytelling brilliance, but
Well, I think it works at least as good as his introduction that he provides in front of uh, Kiki's delivery service. It's a little bit heavy-handed. Very pleasant. He's proud of the work, which is nice, but
all right. So, and then finishing up my Inktober sketch, I would break out my stylo, which I did not use for this one because I didn't need to. Not without. I didn't have like a whole lot of fine detail. I might go just anyway.
oh, I see. Wait a minute. This
Then,
is so getting some expressive lines, but back to the world of a tighter pen.
yeah. Just like around areas that like really matter, like his eyes. If I need to put a few little like schmutz lines on him to. There we go. So there we have our inked beetle.
Cool.
We-
Convincingly gritty and stinky. All right.
You ready to try, Rob?
And I'll yeah, sure. I'm ready to try. I have a few samples to point at before I do a demo. And let's see, where are we on me right now? The camera?
Oh, let me put it on your
The demo.
drawing table.
Yeah, cool. So here we go. This is an example of something I did outside of Inktober in 2015, where every day for 2015 I wanted to average. So I did do bursts and took days off here and there, but essentially I have 365 drawings published for that year, and that was through this thing I called the Unblocking Project. And so when something like Inktober came along, it was like, well, that set out. It just sort of defined a flavor and maybe a higher bar, or at least a more themed bar for like 30 days of that year. And because subject matter wise, it ranged all over the place. Maybe we'll end up talking a little bit about that in the next section. But in Inktober in specific, I did things that would have stages like this, where I would these couple of paired dinosaurs, where they have they're red penciled and then blue penciled, and then I would actually scan it and then finish it digitally, and do like a pretty rapid inking and possibly flat or possibly textured coloring depending on my mood, or not colored depending on how much time I had. But then the Inktober, I've found the pattern of, well, I really enjoy the a similar range of tools as Jerzy. I'll show you some of those in a minute, but similar process. So red pencil, blue pencil to tighten things up a little bit, inking for the outline, but then possibly doing some ink texturing. Likely not with brush pen. Actually, in 2015, I have essentially just taken a break from the brush pens, because the way I use a well, I guess it's not a felt tipped pen. I hesitate calling it felt, because I mean they're really hard hard-tipped pens. But things like microns and derwents are commonly what I use for the outlines. I can get a little bit of line variation, and that I was fine with that, because then I would create the rest of the shape and volume of the character with Copic markers. So things like the bird or these cats, a couple examples of that. And then maybe pick like a couple of colors for a splash of flair, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I was going to work on this drawing with stuff from my little pencil bag, which these are dinosaurs that I designed.
I was going to say, those look like Stenzinger dinosaurs to me.
Yeah, they totally are. And what is that fabric site? It is called escapingmybrain.com. Can't remember, but I'll have to look for that.
It's not really escapingmybrain.com, everybody.
Hey, what's that? So it's but they will essentially, for a pretty low fee, let you like test your fabric to see how it repeats and whatnot, and they have some digital tools that let you do some experimenting online, so you have an educated guess. But if just like if you're doing your book in print, you don't really know until you get a proof and have it in your hands what the physical material will be like. But anyway, that's so my wife Kate made a little pencil bag out of that sample.
Cool. You'll have to look up the URL later so we can put that in the show notes, because I want to try that.
Yes, definitely. Will do. So the common size that I use is the 0.8. So that's like a little bit of a thicker, looking for my camera there, a little bit of a thicker tipped felt pen. And that is like my general duty. So I'll either use a 0.5 or a 0.8. And then the for lighter lines or more detail work, I may just jump straight down to a 0.1 or 0.01, which is a super fine tip. Like that thing, I have experimented with drawing very small just for fun, and that's a kind of tip that will get you to there. Like if you essentially take a standard size sheet of cardstock, like 8.5 by 11 or A4 format, and you cut it down into not fourths but eighths, and then work on that size and try to make like a whole scene out of it, that kind of thing.
Cool.
Fun exercise, but this process, when I want to get ideas out and capture a drawing, it's not too dissimilar to what Jerzy did for his process here. And I'm using a little notebook that was a gift. It's not as thick of a paper as I would like, but the theme of the notebook's kind of fun. It's essentially a Zelda moleskin.
I was gonna say, look at the Triforce in the cover there.
Yeah, but definitely a fun place to capture ideas. So you'll see some of these characters. There's a lot of detail to be figured out, even though the style is definitely cute, rounded, and not meant to be hyper detailed. But there's essentially a kid, and then people in mascot suits, and then one of the people has their mascot head off. And I forget why I made this drawing, but it was something that I thought would make a fun little scene. So with this, so a lot of times I'll set up some work where I want to just get some idea out of my head, and for some reason mascot suits were on my mind. But I might, if I were pressed for time and I'm thinking like, you know what, this is just something I want to express and share today, I would go from this loose to pen. But then I might, do a similar process what Jerzy pointed out, where pull out more tools from the little toolbox. I have essentially a red marked. I put a piece of masking tape that I colored So I know there's red pencil, red.
Yeah. I put stickers on my pencils for the same reason. Yeah.
That's funny. And then, yep, here's my blue one.
Yep.
And then some similar things with here's the Kuretake, who's had
Hey,
quite a bit
your
of a
pen's
break.
like my pen.
Exactly, Pen Bros. Um,
Pen Bros. Yep. If we were in the same room, we totally chest bump.
yes,
There's our
it's,
click eraser.
Yeah, Click Eraser. This is a new one. But then here's an interesting one. This was actually from just hearing the high praise that Zach Giolongo mentioned, which I love saying this. Zach Giolongo recommended Tombo.
That's like the beginning of a children's song.
It sounds fantastic.
Somebody should be strumming an acoustic guitar and Zach Giolongo recommended Tombo.
It's funny. I hear Beastie Boys when I say it. Like, Zach Giolongo recommended Tombo and like jumping over couches and stuff.
And there's the difference between me and Rob, everybody. He hears Beastie Boys. I hear Gemini. I tried the Tombo, and I did not like it. What do you like about it?
Oh, see, here's what I do like is that it's a spongier brush tip. It's not a brush, really. It's a pointy sponge.
Yeah.
And
yuck.
But I actually I really like Copic markers, and it's not a distant relative.
Oh, I can see that. Yeah, it's a cousin to the Copics. I can totally see that.
Yeah. So okay, I have some. There we go. That came out of my bag earlier, but like I mean that Copic tip is very much a little more a little looser when you get the Copic brush tip, but like that brush really isn't a brush. It's also a sort of sponge.
Gotcha.
But,
okay.
So that's definitely part of why they didn't feel that strange going from, a real brush to the Tombow.
Cool.
And to me, I actually find it behaves more like a magic felt tip, where it's not like it's spreading and splitting like a brush. It's like a certain thickness and then a thicker thickness as soon as I give a little more pressure. So a little more control, I think.
It's a little bit more of a rigid drawing experience. It feels tougher on the page than a brush pen, in my experience.
And that is so you're not a fan of the rigid.
No, I like really soft leads in my pencils, and I like really soft brushes. I like using a super light touch. But no, I mean, like, Anne used the Tombow, and like when I got it, and I was like, ugh, I hate this, and Anne tried it. She's like, this is terrific. I'm like, great, glad somebody's using it. So it's like the big idea here is that every tool is different for every different artist. But what are you doing now? So you're gonna clean up. Oh, you're going in with blue pencil now on top of your red pencil.
Yeah. So this is an example. Like I actually probably wouldn't do this because there's not a lot of details. I think the only character that really has like a severe lack of information at the moment is the person whose head is popping out of their mascot suit. So I would need to sort of figure out like what's that transition between the suit and their neck. Is it like furry, or is it some kind of latch thing attaching head to body, what have you. But I decided to go with something looser there. And then this person's face is like I really didn't really outline the jaw very well yet, or figure out those details, and maybe even what exactly their expression is, because I didn't put eyebrows in, and that can help me figure out what to emphasize or not later on. So I would probably, for the sake of brevity, go with like a really simple, upper eyelid / ocular cavity.
Okay.
So not worry about like really detailed eyes, and then simple nose, and be like, okay, cool, time to ink. Because the hair is pretty loose, and I'm like, well, I feel good enough with that. So let's go straight to a thick pen. You see that the that Derwent is it's just really it's really reliable to push from any direction I want. I like that.
Mm. That is one of the nice things about felt tip pens, is that you don't have to be as careful about what direction you're pushing. You can basically treat it like a pencil. Whereas with a brush, it's a little brush and a crow quill, it's a little bit tougher. You gotta be a little bit more conscious of what angle you're using and what direction you're pushing.
Hmm.
Now you're adding these eyes inside of the circles on the puppy dog mascot's head. Did you just decide to do that now?
I did. Because I figure I want people to be reacting and speaking with their eyes from character to character. So in this scene, as you're scanning, you would probably assemble some kind of relationships, like to see like who's annoyed by who and whatnot, and so I'm sort of thinking of a narrative as I'm going along.
Mm.
Figuring this is probably a bunch of mascots taking a break. So I just added a soda can.
Right, I see. So you're sort of like using the process of throwing the lines down as a way of generating, or I don't know how. I know this what you're doing right now. I've experienced it myself, and it feels like I'm having a conversation with the paper, right? Like each line is like what if, and the paper throws back, or it feels like it's throwing back ideas at me. And like I usually, like, and then I've heard other writers talk about this. Like the act of writing actually generates more ideas, and like sitting around waiting for ideas isn't enough sometimes, right?
I very much agree with that. Putting things into motion, and then seeing what emerges out of the motion, and
it sounds kind of silly and metaphysical, but it's, in my experience, it's true.
I think I could try to depict it like that, and if I am, that's not my intent, because it really is like having, let's think of it more as surveying your own work as you go, and purposefully injecting more moments besides the super moment of like I'm drawing, and then darkness happens, and then there's a drawing. And then you revisit what happened in the world then. But let's see. I'll just leave it like that. I've seen video streams of artists who take a different approach and convey this as something more mystical, but I think it's just good old thinking about the work.
Yeah. And letting your subconscious do some of it for you.
Yeah, I mean, because if there's one thing you can do, this is maybe you're almost challenging me to sound metaphysical, but like, or like pseudoscientific, but you can really trust that I think your brain's going to try to come up with patterns as you continue to work.
Yeah, and when we get to the 10,000 feet up section in the second half, I want to explore that what the difference between starting out with like a vision versus like sort of interviewing the paper. I do both when I do these challenges.
Yeah.
So okay, so now I'm seeing you do essentially a lot of contours, a lot of shape delineation. Is this meant to be colored like the other pieces you were showing earlier, or like are you going to go in with some Copics after this and start fleshing out some of the volume with shading, with value, or are you going to use other pen tools to determine that value?
I would likely go the route of the Copics, and or scan it. But then for something like Inktober, I would avoid the scanning step and focus on how could I do this with natural media, and especially natural media that I felt comfortable with and that I could work pretty quickly.
I think that's part of the fun of the thing too, is doing as much as you can on paper and then just using like a simple phone camera to capture the results.
It's yeah, it's great. It's definitely embracing a limitation, um, especially if that's not your day in day out process, and you're using this as a chance to visit another process. So let's see. So let's say that, like I mentioned, that I'll use this 8 for more outlines, and then if you can tell, but there's slight line weight variation there.
Mm-hmm. Oh, you can see
And
even when you were laying it down. Yeah, like the kitty in the middle, the head has a a thicker line than that arm, the right arm.
hmm and some of that may be just you know something to fix, but which I also find the pens, felt tip pens are a little bit more forgiving for me for being able to go back in and add and change. So I might convey some of the texture with a. So this is a little bit of texture, a little bit of shade, tiny bit of value, right? Nothing extreme, but it would work with that next step if I then add Copic markers to the process.
All of these pens you're using are waterproof too, aren't they?
Yeah. There's too much of the too. Oh yeah, there it is. The word waterproof has not been rubbed off. Look at that. Micropigment ink for waterproof and fade proof, etc.
Which is important if you're going to start putting markers down on that.
Yeah, no doubt. Although I think alcohol-based markers are a little bit more lower risk than something like water-based markers for causing problems with other materials. I don't know. Tweet me about that if you disagree. But
Or mention it in the chat. Love to hear your guys' experiences.
So let's see. So a little bit of texturing. There you go. It's flat line work. A few more characters to go, but for the sake of the demo, I will stick with this. So then I often would do a lighter color Copic. This, let's say I've got an N2 that's a neutral, but then, an N3, I have two neutrals. A lot of times I try to either lean cool or warm. But
you don't cross the streams on that.
No. I mean, there is no exact rule or science to it, but like I find that when I'm not laying down a lot of color or whatnot, it just gives a nice bias for the image where it's like, you definitely have a cool or warm impression. So let's see. So I'm going with, so I'll go with N2 to start. And then this is where
now you just start lightly scrubbing in some of the tones with the Copic marker, and right now you're thinking about light source and giving the shape some weight.
Exactly.
This is going pretty speedy, Rob.
Oh boy, what you saying, Jerzy?
I'm just saying that this seems like a pretty fast process. And another thing to make a note of, perhaps, is for 10,000 feet up, is the use of live streaming to sort of put you under put the thread of the hangman's noose in front of you, right? I've noticed that I tend to work faster when I've got an audience watching me.
Oh yeah, that's cool. I have not done it frequently enough.
You know,
Pages of- yeah.
you're also using a tool that I have very limited experience with. I have not used Copics very much, and it's one of those tools where I know I need to level up with that someday and get some experience using markers for shading, because I've seen people do really impressive stuff with it, but and I'm watching how you're blending this and how well it blends, and I'm like,
Oh
really?
gosh, it's so awesome. Like it's that would be some magic. The day Jerzy takes the Copics out for some quality time.
Take it for a walk.
Take it for a walk. Have some good conversation. So let's see. Then then I've got the N3 hanging out here, and then it just goes very seamlessly.
Kind of hard to see the bottom of the kitty's
Okay.
body. There we go.
Bottom.
Thank you. Cool.
Yeah. So then, if I wanted to do that backgroundy kind of thing, I do often do one of the like a feathered thing where essentially there's a highlight zone near the characters, but then there's almost like an atmospheric darkness that happens the farther away a line I put is from all the characters, and that with the Copic it's just really trivial to you just go back over it again. And
yeah.
So anyway, and then that would just give those characters some emphasis, and once I would finish the whole drawing, just get a snapshot out on the old Instagrams. And there'd be maybe more information as far as shadows to be concerned with. And then for the most part, dealing with a couple of levels of value of Copic that I might get enough shadow, but if I can't, then it can be handy to get a darker Copic and bring that in.
But still, with very little material, you've managed to flesh out something with shape, volume, depth. Right? Looks like you walked off an episode of Hey Arnold.
It's funny, as I think it kind of reminds me of some of the characters you run into in the not for all ages video game Saints Row the Third. So I think that's partially the subconscious popcorn machine in the back of my brain doing its thing. So what do you think about that for demos?
I think we walked around some demos there. I think we showed some different approaches, some different looks, and I think maybe it's time we did a little bit of unboxing about why we do it the way we do. Talk about different approaches and sort of exploring. I guess the question we're going to answer in about 1 minute and 30 seconds is, if you decide that, hey, this Inktober thing sounds like it's a manageable, fun thing I'd like to try, I've seen other people do it, maybe I can ship a drawing every day for the month of October, maybe I want to take on one of the other later challenges, maybe I want to take on 24-hour comic day. The question to answer then is, are you doing it just for the experience of it and sort of like, improvising your way through it, or are there benefits to be had in forming a framework and sort of setting some goals or even some creative limitations, and what benefits derive from that? Having done a few of these things a few times, we've got some thoughts on that. We're going to explore them in a minute. But first, we have some other sponsors to thank, and the sponsors are you guys, the folks who support us on Patreon. What is Patreon? If you haven't heard of it, it's like Kickstarter but for ongoing projects. So instead of being an event-driven thing where it's like, oh, we got to raise money for this thing in 30 days, it's like we just do the show every 2 weeks, and we ask you guys to help us make it more sustainable by contributing as little as $1 a month. And the more of you do that, the more Rob and I can be compensated for our time, and the more sustainable the show can be. We've got 5 people that we want to thank this month who have been supporting us on Patreon. And the first one is Rachel Ross. Rachel can be found on Twitter at NYCTERIS. So it's like New York City Terrace. And Rachel's always been awesome and responding and conversing with us on Twitter and in other places. Casey Snipes. Casey can be found on Twitter at letter K, letter C, Snipes. And Casey, man, I've known him for a long time, back since the Art and Story days. I remember meeting him at SPX years ago. Thank you, Casey, for supporting the show and making it sustainable. Kelly Ishikawa at Kelly with a K, Kelly of Ishikawa on Twitter. Kelly posts good work over there too. You can check that out on Twitter. Catherine Sugru, our friend from overseas, can be found on Twitter at KATSOOGROO. Cat Sugru. Thank you, Catherine, for supporting us. And then finally, Mark Falk. Mark Falk can be found on Twitter at _Chagall, SHAGAL. Mark's been doing some interesting dark work over there that you can check out on Twitter. And thanks to everybody who has supported us on Patreon. And if you feel like you'd like to participate and check out some of the open mic stuff that we do there, the extra leans we post there, you can find it at patreon.com/leanintoart. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thank you very much.
All right, time to go on the ground?
Yeah.
Or no.
Well.
No, we're going to go up.
Exactly.
Good. Gracious.
Flight controllers, gonna go for
10,000 feet up.
Retro, go. Vital, go. Guidance, go. Control, go. Telcom,
Time to talk about
ESC,
why
go.
we do this
Econ,
stuff.
go. Surgeon, go.
So thinking about framing up a 30-day challenge.
Yeah.
Where do you want to start, Rob?
Well, I like the idea of, do you jump right in? Do you prep? What's the value of that whole preparation?
Right. Well, prep, correct me if I'm wrong, Rob, but prep is the opposite of fun. Yes?
I think it depends on which, let's see, so which Smurf you are?
Are you handy Smurf or are you greedy Smurf? Right?
Yeah. No, honestly, right. I mean, I would say that's definitely a personality quirk or what have you, that the prep doesn't have to, be awful. Look at any gear up scene from lots of movies. And ranging all the way back to The Seven Samurai, right? Maybe that was one of the early examples of prep can be, I guess it was urgent. They were probably stressed out, but they got more skilled and confident because they prepared.
Well, you've engaged with these challenges in the spirit of play, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, 100%. So sometimes the the prep isn't extensive because, like, a few years back, I forget which 24-hour comic day, I essentially, the year before, I completed 24 pages in 24 hours, and then I wanted to learn something new, and I knew I was taking on this challenge, so I was like, well, I am going to get into Manga Studio, and I'm going to start that today. So that is some prep, and but
there's an inherent,
not extensive.
There's like a front-ended kind of prep in the challenge itself, in that Jake is saying, draw something on paper. Right? The idea is, it's called Inktober, at least in this specific example. There's like a little bit of, and in 24-hour comic day, there's a framework in the form of, you're going to ship a 24-page comic in 24 hours, right? And Scott McCloud, the guy who came up with the idea, or at least was one of the first big proponents of it, really broke it down to, well, 1 page per hour, or 6 panels per page, or 1 panel every 10 minutes, right? So like there's like sort of like a chunking that is front-ended in the whole idea. So it's not necessarily totally freeform, but this is one of those things where it's like it's open for interpretation, but for the most part, like, the adherence to these simple rules is sort of like
it's making a sport of it. It's you're setting up those kind of boundaries to help you focus on some approachable challenge,
which is enough of the challenge, right? That is challenge enough. You don't have to go any further than that if you don't want to, right? If this is just a matter of just checking in. But I mean, other ways to think about it, like if you're not sure, what tools do I use? What materials do I start with? Ways I've done in the past for me personally, I've explored, is like you could break it down to as simple as, I'm going to follow those 4 rules on Jake Parker's site, and I'm going to do it all with just this pen, right? Like, because I want to master this pen. This would be a way for me to basically train on that pen.
Which is exactly what I did with Manga Studio.
Right.
Yes. And I mean, because what that is you're finding your personal connection to the challenge, which could be, and like ranging from, I am going to participate just as is and go with the flow, see what happens every day, or I have additional multiple goals and purposes that I'm weaving into this challenge.
All right, let's talk about goals.
Well,
What do you mean goals? What goals could we possibly have in mind? And let's try to be open-ended about this and a little bit more like thinking like, I'm going to challenge you, Rob. I'm going to ask you to think abstractly about this instead of like really concretely about this. How do you establish a goal, right? If you're just starting out with something like this.
Well, I would say, well, why am I interested in this challenge in the first place? There must be something about it that I want to experience, and why is that? So you could get into the whole ask yourself why at least, multiple times to dig deeper. So perhaps it's I want to take part in this challenge because it has some sort of it's an event, and I think it's easy to speak in broad generalities, but it is a common motivation that we have as people to be part of something that is bigger than us. These kind of events can help do that, and be a bit. It takes the pressure off of it too, where it's like just show up, and now you're part of something bigger. And then, well, okay, fine. Is that it? Is there anything else? Any other reasons why you want to be part of this? Why you want to do this? And so what starts coming out? So, well, for you, Jerzy, when you start asking yourself why, what starts to come out?
Yeah. Gosh, I wonder if this comes back to intrinsic and extrinsic motivations, because I think about both, I think, a lot when I'm taking on different learning experiences. So in the past with Inktober's, and I can pull up on the screen here some of my past entries. One year, I did it all in a sketchbook, and it was really low frills. I wasn't looking to create anything publishable. This was like more to play along with the game, but create a mechanism to force me to check in on something. Not just tools, but also in the case of the year 2014, it was idea generation, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this was me saying like, okay, I'm going to come up with 31 sketches of the characters and world of Boulder and Fleet as I was gearing up to start the webcomic, right? And this was like an off-the-cuff thing, this drawing of this pig and this tortoise, right? And it became the mini comic Pickles and Taft Adventures.
That's so cool. Some character design right there.
Right. So it just like became it's like a daily exploration of, and you could see like for 3 days it was like, okay, wait a second, I like this a lot.
Really like
I'm going to draw them over and over.
These folks, yeah.
So this was not meant to be create anything where I had like some like awesome artifact afterwards. This was more of me just like using the challenge itself as a way to check in and develop.
No, it's conceptual phase creativity.
Yeah.
This idea is coming into existence and becoming stronger as you're working with it.
Right. Right. So yeah, and here's like the very first drawings I ever did of the mineral gals who showed up in Adventures for Hire. And working out what their powers and abilities would be.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so that was 1 year. But then, like, the next year, and I know we talked about this on last year's Lineage Art when we were sort of wrapping up our experience doing Inktober, is I set the challenge of, okay, well, I'm going to do the same idea, but now I'm going to add the extra constraint of I need to come up with a toyetic accessory or vehicle to go along with my characters, pretending that it's like a really crass toy line, right? It's like, what was this? It was like Cable Dash Taft, fighting the Terra Jets. And then the other constraint I put upon myself is that I wanted to do it in pencil and ink, but I wanted there to be one color element with crayon, right? And I wanted to keep the crayons limited to like 1 or 2 colors, right?
Mm-hmm.
So here's
attention, emphasis.
I think it was like Blizzard Storm Fleet versus Rube, right? She's got her like cool little backpack and winter gear and shoots ice blasts at. And so each one I was trying to create like this limited color scheme with just crayons. find interesting ways to create imagery and come up with those like dumb ideas that could turn into more.
Yeah, more ideation, more more generation of things that, I mean, so you could generate things for different reasons too. So it's like, well, okay, well, why do I want to do this? I want to participate. I want to be part of something bigger. I want to generate ideas. Why do you want to generate ideas? It's essentially developing something for one of your products.
Oh, and then one other layer to this that I want to add is like you'll notice that these are actually on Bristol. These are not in a sketchbook.
Mm-hmm.
Reason being is that this was something where I wanted it to serve two purposes. And see, this is like all the, I don't know. We'll unbox this whether or not this is overthinking, Rob. But I wanted this to be something that I could use as a giveaway for my Patreon, right? I was launching the Boulder and Fleet Patreon that year. I was like, okay, well, for that month, it's like I'm going to do a sketch a day, and then if you sign up for my Patreon at this level, you'll get one of these sketches, right? But then also, as I thought, well, if I do it on Bristol, I can do a better job of it, and then I can scan all these and I can print it up as a book. So it's like I'm really trying to get just squeeze out every last little drop of use out of this challenge. Yeah.
And right, I don't think you were asking for my opinion or what have you, that I would, okay, so is it overthinking? Did it stop you from doing the work, and did you accomplish some of the goals that you set out?
Yeah. It did.
So,
It got people to sign up on the Patreon at the higher level to get the sketches. So mission accomplished there. I have the materials to print up in a book, which I still need to do. So mission accomplished there. I checked in all the days, but I think 2. I came up with a lot of fun ideas that may or may not get used. But yeah, so it didn't stop me. It wasn't so much prep that it prevented me from doing it. But I don't know if that's like, I don't know if that would have been too much to throw in front of me when I first took on the challenge years ago. That's all I'm saying, right? Do we want to go to your mind map to talk about that? Because I think that's kind of what we're heading towards, aren't we?
Yeah, not trying to throw it there, but it does feel sort of natural, but I'm a bit biased in that regard. So it came out of my brain earlier today while I was on the bus. So yeah, I mean, are we looking at the mind map?
Yeah, I got it pulled up.
Cool. So thinking about your intentions for Inktober or any creative challenge, and I think maybe you could rearrange this in a variety of ways. Think of it as bricks and string or boxes and arrows, and you could break this down into your own approach that makes sense to you. But should I present this a little bit, Jerzy? Explore?
Yeah, please. Let's walk us through this mind map that we got up on the screen.
So I was thinking inherently Inktober or taking part in a creative challenge that's a social one has you probably want to share and connect. And there is that sort of public commitment, extra energy, urgency thing you got. I want to not really owe, but you said you'd be there kind of thing, and that can help you get past the friction of not doing it.
And it's paying the capital for entry into the tribe, right? It's showing that you have skin in the game.
Yeah, I can show up. I can be here. I can be part of this tribe.
Yeah.
And so that's a given. So I was thinking there's that one, but then as far as the art itself, what do you want to get out of it? What kind of experiences or other benefits? I think that there's sort of 4 core branches where maybe it's generative, or maybe it's practice, or maybe it's specific, right? There's a product that you're going to create through this, and you're combining it with the challenge. Yeah. Or maybe you're just supporting a current product, and the output from this challenge helps you achieve that goal.
So when you're supporting an existing product, then this becomes marketing materials.
Yeah.
You're generating marketing materials through Inktober.
Or content for a blog. It's your behind the scenes thing. It's your Patreon Patreon patron feed, what have you.
Mm-hmm.
And this could be output that goes into there. But if it's a specific product, like, you know what problem you're trying to solve. You don't need to generate like new thought or what have you, and you're more like executing an existing plan that happens to have an overlap enough with this creative challenge where you're like, oh, okay, I can combine these two.
Yeah.
And then like practice. Stop me anywhere here, Jerzy.
No. Keep going. I'll jump in when I need to.
Then breaking the practice into more specific areas, there's probably sort of like a particular subject. Maybe you want to explore topics and different types of things that you wouldn't have normally drawn or created. And then, or perhaps it's technique, which could be a tool or a skill.
Right. That was when I was saying earlier, like, I'm gonna do the challenge, but I'm gonna do it with this kind of pen. I'm gonna do it with just typing paper and ballpoint pens. That's gonna be the way I take on this challenge this time. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Meets the criteria, and it's a way for you to suddenly say, like, okay, what is the maximum I can get out of this tool? Because I'm sort of forcing myself to only work with it in the dojo, right? Or if it's like, yeah, I want to work with Copic markers, let's see how they work with
catalyst.
And the great thing about it is it's practice, so it's low risk. I don't have to worry about meeting some kind of production value that I've established with a client. This is me, I mean, yes, intrinsically with certain things like 24-hour count day and Inktober, there's a sharing element to it, but you don't have to.
No, you don't have to. But there can be pressure there.
But then, like you said, particular subject. What I love about that is that's what I was doing with my last year's exploration, where it was like, okay, let's try to come up with 31 vehicles and accessories. Tell your parents' kids. This is why you should, like, just celebrate. Because as I said at the top of this episode, Boulder and Fleet was meant to be sort of a celebration of the animation we grew up with as kids. So let's go the step further and do the commercials, right? So yes, exploring a particular subject to sort of hone your chops as an improviser, right? Yeah. Okay, now generative. This is another aspect, at least in my sketchbook. Let's talk about that.
Okay, so maybe you want to get ideas out, like purposefully have new stuff to you that come into the world. Like you want to practice the process of improv, where you don't have a roadmap ahead, but you're going to be in the moment, yes and things, and see what comes out in that sort of like becoming friends with deadline pressure and just being able to keep moving along in that circumstance. But then maybe you're trying to sketch ideas because now it's like once this is generated, you intend this to be an asset that you can then dig through and mine materials out of.
Right.
And then, but then generative could be a different sort of product development where you don't know exactly the project, but you know you want to figure out what project to work on next. So it's more like discovering to find a particular problem. And because you could, like, for instance, something you could say like, I'm going to do different characters and action poses through the whole month, or I'm going to emphasize a different shape or a different animal, or pick something because I'm hunting for that thing, and then this is you executing on that. But then the outcome would be, well, you found that next project. But then this is a little similar-ish, but like you may want to just explore variety. Like, I've really never done something in a really minimalist aesthetic. I want to try that, and I want to try expressionist work.
Here was something I want to say. I was reading this on Flint Dilley's Facebook feed. Flint Dilley is one of the he's done a lot of writing over the years. He did some stuff with Gary Gygax for Dungeons and Dragons. He wrote some choose your own adventure, sort of a grown-up fantasy books called Sagard. But he was also he's most well known for being one of the head writers at Sunbow Animation. So he worked on G.I. Joe, Transformers, a lot of the stuff that I love. And if I remember right, he was telling a story about how when they would pitch a story, they would do sort of like the obvious version first, then like a ridiculous version, and then like a third version, right? Sort of like to explore iterations on a premise. And then I was also talking with Zach Giolongo recently, and I think Lucy Bellwood, about this idea of doing this sort of first, second, third approach with story generation to do, here's like the version for a kid audience, here's the version for an adult audience, like here's like a dark version, here's a light version of the same idea.
Yeah, that was one of the big conversations that we referred to at the that was after
A2CAF?
That was after A2CAF. The multi-hour lawn relaxing conversation afterward.
Okay.
And Keen Sue was one of the people that was also he was experiencing this with one of his works, his current works.
With March Grand Prix. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we're actually going to drop that episode, that conversation in a Galaxy of Super Adventure in a couple weeks, maybe a week. I'm not sure, but anyway. So yes, people will be able to hear that whole conversation. It was a terrific idea, and I love this idea of. So you could use this to say, like when you say explore variety in that part of your mind map here in new territory. You could say like, okay, well here's Boulder and Fleet for HBO. Here's a Boulder and Fleet for little kids. How does that change? And is there anything I can mine from the different iterations for a third iteration? Right,
and I think what you're also describing is the other sort of explore variety thing too, which is the mashup and the remix, where you're purposely finding new out of the combinations and putting things in a new light because of just switching it up. Like what if I reframing something of like, well, what if I did this for the young audience? What if I did this for an older audience? What if I did this for knitting aficionados? Or what if I did this for and it just, how does that framing transform your work?
Yeah,
and that's the whole point. It's another generative approach.
We need to pass this mind map around. I think this is great, Rob. I think this is a really useful tool for sort of giving everybody a framework for like what do I want to get out of this thing, rather than looking at concrete examples. It's like just follow this mind map and ask yourself some questions based on it. I mean, you can do it for fun. You can just explore it improvisationally, or if you want to, really come up with sort of, I guess a workout plan, right?
Or combine a bunch of these. Like your whole your plan is your sort of composition of goals for the for your Boulder and Fleet work last Inktober is, I mean, it's produce a specific product plus I guess plus some mashup plus
there's mashup in there plus practice because it was also working with limited color palettes, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, it was all the above, right? Because like I'm also trying to how well can I create mood with ink and crayon, right?
Technique, yep.
Technique, generating ideas because I know I came up with a couple of new character ideas out of this deal. Like this was a new character that I came up with. Let's see. Oh, right here, this crow character was completely, just came up with it on the spot one day. And then also developing ideas because I know that I did some Baron von Bear pieces in here. And something I was thinking of that Tony Cliff once said when he was on the Comics a Great show years ago, is he said that when he sketched his characters, he liked to sketch them interacting with other characters in his story because that's how you find out what makes your characters tick, right? You draw them on their own, they're just standing there. But you draw them interacting with another character, you see the differences. And I was really taking that to heart with this series. Like, part of the creative challenge behind this was, and I know I've talked about this before, it was the back of the He-Man and the Masters of the Universe toy cards, which always had at the top of the page, it had like the character you just bought doing something exciting, but they were always interacting with somebody else. It was like, Beastman uses his power to control Beast to sneak up on He-Man. So all of these had like this, like a hero-villain sort of interaction with our main character in the foreground and our other character in the background, right?
Mm-hmm.
But using that as a way to also, Huh?
What a great device to,
Yeah, it's just
to frame things up. And
yeah, it was a simple way to frame things up, but also to like get me to think about characters interacting with one another, even if it is something very simple of like I'm bad and I'm breaking rocks and you're falling down, you know. But also, how do they react to this? Right?
But exactly the how someone's breaking a rock and how someone else is falling down, that that says something about both of them.
Are we closing in a final thought? Oh, I want to talk very briefly, because it wouldn't be a lean into Artcast unless we talked about this. We'll talk about journaling a little bit. Because when we get to our final thought, my journaling played a large part in determining what I want to do with Inktober 2016. Did you capture any data in years past as to like what the cost was for adding Inktober or other challenges to your workload?
What's interesting, I did not capture like the precise amount of time I spent on it. I just made sure that it happened for me in the midst of a year I was already publishing a drawing every day. So I just inherently had this habit to make sure I had a portion of my day available to this. And sometimes I would work ahead when I would have like I'd complete a drawing more quickly, then I might do a lot of underdrawings to work ahead. That would, put me in a good position later on. But I mean, it would be roughly an hour to an hour and a half every day.
Okay. The last couple years, I've been using, as everybody knows, the ETP, the Emergent Task Planner by David Say, and I was actually capturing like really concrete data on like what all of these sketches cost me in terms of time, and from pencils to inks to whatever embellishments I put on it. And it wound up averaging around like 45 minutes to an hour per sketch. Now the reason I bring that up is because when I came up with what I want to do for this year's event, and if it's your first time doing Inktober, I'm only mentioning this to say that perhaps journaling should be an aspect of it, like using something like the ETP, using something like day one journaling, or other time tracking software like Habitica, like maybe even Trello could be used in this way, but something to capture like what time you're spending on the sketches and when you're doing them too. Where do they fall in the day? Is this something that you just hurriedly do before you dash off for something else? Is it something you do at the top of your day? Are you using it as a useful distraction between projects when you need like a little break from something? Which was all stuff I captured. And so when I came up with like this idea of what I want to do this year, I was like, can I do it? I went back to the last 2 years of my ETPs and the last two Inktober's. I'm like, okay, I see where they're falling in the day. I see how much time they're taking, and now I can make a really accurate assessment of what I'm capable of this year and whether or not it's too big of a challenge, right?
That's incredibly handy. And so I would say, just to point out, like you're talking about more quantitative, it's sort of a qual-quant style thing where you're saying, through your own observation, write down this thing, and through the habits and the structure of the ETP, that's going to be a pretty accurate thing, right? But it ends up being a number at the end of the day. I do journal very habitually, and I mine it, for instance, with the whole my experience inventory I did. And I will use that as guidance as I choose what I'm going to tackle, but I still haven't quite picked it out yet for Inktober. But now's the time to be thinking about that. Definitely interested in the variety, in the usual suspects that I normally am. Thinking about in 2014, I think I was doing some character development for a comic that I might come back to or morph. 2015 was I combined Inktober with Drawloween, and in some ways I enjoyed that. In other ways, it just it took out a little bit of the adventure for me, because Drawloween was essentially the same prompt for everybody that whole month.
Right.
Yeah, I interpreted and explored, but it was a lot of fun. But I don't think I'm going to combine those two this year. I think I will be something else, some kind of project thing I want to tackle, and I will use my journal to help inform it. But the budget, I am a little envious of your accurate estimation.
Well, I mean, it's an accurate estimation, but it is still an estimation because I'm adding new variables to the mix this time, or at least I think I am, which we'll talk about in like 2 minutes. How about that? Or like about a minute. 60 seconds. Can we do it in 60 seconds? Let's do it in 60 seconds. So in 60 seconds, we're going to sum up our final thoughts with talking about, we showed how we did it. We talked about why you want to do it and different frameworks for approaching it. Now we'll talk about case in point, what we're thinking about doing for this year's event and why. But before we go there, I want to point people at, we've talked about a lot of different ways you can support the show. If you find this material valuable, you can always go, check out the things that we make, which we talked about at the top of the episode. Support us on Patreon, which we talked about in the center of the episode. But now, as a closing thought, a great free thing you can do, costs you no money, is to go to iTunes and give the show a star review. However many stars you think it deserves. You don't have to write a review, although that is we appreciate it when people do that. We very much appreciate reviews on iTunes. Or, if you're watching this on YouTube, give it a thumbs up. Giving the video a thumbs up helps more people find the show, raises its rankings and so on. More people discover the show, the more people can support the show financially, makes it more sustainable for us. So we thank everybody who has given us reviews or mentioned us on Twitter or other social media, just saying nice things about us. It means a lot. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, very cool. One in particular, very recently, NaNoSoup did a really, really awesome tweet mentioning us. At NaNoSoup on Twitter.
Yeah, Becca Hilburn. Yeah. She was.
Yep, Becca.
And I mean, to reciprocate, she did a really great video unboxing the Inktober Art Snacks box, if anybody's interested in that. It's like a box of, tools that you can use for Inktober, and she gives a full review on her YouTube channel, NaNoSoup. Okay. Time to talk about what we're going to do for 2016. What are you thinking about doing, Rob?
Well, I have the experience of the unblocking project to leverage, and there are clear patterns that I actually intend to do some kind of data visualization about, just to see like what I did and what have you, the subject matter and techniques and stuff. But I haven't delved into it. I feel like there are themes that stand out even without diving, putting a data hat on it. And using that, I really like when cute animals do really kick butt things, and also just silly stuff. I like it when cute animals are mixed up with monsters, and or putting something cute with something a lot less cute, and connecting them together where there's some kind of like awkward moment and or conflict going on. I like that a lot. That's kind of a just a quirky, natural stuff I like to draw engine. That'll be my default, but I do want to think a bit about a bit more about that. Another visit through my my day one journal. Another look at my the reports that I created from my which we did a whole podcast about, the experience inventory exercise I did when I did a self-interview thing, generated a lot of data points about like what I experienced in the year 2015. So yeah, I'm going to dust off that stuff and see what emerges. But there's definitely projects that I could use art for. We'll see. Nothing's clearly winning right now, though. And I'm also thinking of Art Sound Off, which will happen right after.
Oh, yay. You're right.
Right after Inktober. Which, yeah, if you're curious about what that is, that's go to artsoundoff.com, and that'll send you to the page. That is essentially it's a creative challenge where you record some thoughts about the things that you make every day for the month of November. And we do have a big list of prompts, and I'm thinking about like it'd be good to dust that off and maybe edit, revise, who knows.
Yeah, and I mean, another great thing about it happening when it does is it's right after Inktober, so it'd be a great way for you to sort of like, if you want prompts, you've got all of the sketches that you did during Inktober that you can use as a prompt for Art Sound Off, right?
That's pretty natural and
I'm going to do
excellent
commentary on every sketch I did last month. There you go. There's your prompt list, right?
Problem solved. Thank you. So yeah, Jerzy, what's so what are you thinking about your?
Okay, so I'm thinking about doing something really stupid, but I'm going to preface.
You mentioned that you've teased it out a bit.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to preface this with this little story. Years ago, this would be maybe 3-4 years ago, I made this mini comic called "Fish Don't Have Teeth."
Mm-hmm.
And it is the story. It's a sort of a prequel to the Boulder and Fleet world. Before Fleet met Boulder, she was the manager of a team of wrestling fish, right? And it's a fun little book. You can find it on my Gumroad. You can download it for free. You can also read it at boulderandfleet.com. Or and if you go to tinyastronaut.com, if you want, you can actually buy one of the mini comics if you really want it. Actually, you can get to that from boulderandfleet.com. Anyway, but the
which
thing
is
was
delightful, and people should. It's worth
it. But the thing was, I made it during an event called Mini Comic Day, which used to be held in March. I think it still is. And the whole point of it is that you sit down and you draw a mini comic in 8 hours or less. So it's sort of like a smaller version of 24-hour Comic Day. And so one year I decided, okay, I'm going to do an entire mini comic that I'm actually going to be able to print and sell at this event, at this year's event. And I'm going to walk in without any preconceived ideas. But I'm going to draw it actual size. So I actually drew the pages this size, which is a quarter the size of a letter sheet of paper. And that means I'll have an hour to draw each page. And I'm going to write it, I'm going to pencil it, I'm going to ink it all in the same day. And I did it. And I actually kind of hurt my shoulder doing it because it was a lot more intense than I thought it was to actually draw this small and also, write all that dialogue and make it legible and clear and everything. Anyway, but so I came with this. It's not, it's not like it's not going to win any awards, but it's a fun little story, and I'm really happy with it. And what was a cool piece of the challenge was I found out what was the minimum I needed on a page in order to ship something that I was satisfied with. Right?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have time to labor over it. So here's an 8-page mini comic I did an hour a page. Right? Proved I can do it. I got the evidence. Inktober's 31 days. I'm like, if I thumbnail it, if I get all the thumbnails done before October 1st. And going back to my ETP, could I do a 30-page story? Ink a 30-page story for Inktober, which is kind of breaking the rules. I mean, there's nothing in there that says anything about shipping a book at the end. It's more about doing sketches. So it's kind of not, it's not something that a lot of people do with the challenge for probably obvious reasons. But, I mean, if I can at least achieve this production value,
mm-hmm.
The math says I can do it, right? Now, math is funny. Math is, it doesn't factor in for the unpredictability of life. And I know for a fact that 1 week in October, I'm going to actually be out of town. I'm going to an event, Cartoon Crossroad Columbus, in Columbus, Ohio. So I'll be gone for like 5 days. So I factored all that in. I was like, okay, well, I can do a 24-page story. If I do the thumbnails now, I can ink a page a day over that month. And I actually I got the outline done, and I actually shared this on the Boulder and Fleet Patreon. I started doing the character designs and everything, which I've shared one today. So I'm thinking that the next Boulder and Fleet story will be an Inktober project where I do it like this mini comic style, and I'll ship a page a day on the Boulder and Fleet Patreon, and then ship pieces everywhere else. So I'm still playing along with Inktober, but I'm kind of creating a product for the people who really love the comic and support it. That's the idea.
That is ambitious, and it's a different flavor of your. That's not a value judgment of saying like, oh, how ambitious. If I cast stones for ambition, I'm hitting myself in the face, dude. So,
as we talked about in Extra Lean, we're both also really addicted to learning.
Yeah.
And what's really exciting about the idea is, can I do it, and how will I be different when I come out on the other side? How will my storytelling change from that level of intensity?
Yeah.
It's it's an hour a day, but I'm also going to be teaching 4 days a week. Plus, I'm going to be penciling and inking a graphic novel. Plus, I also have another freelance gig that I got to ship on in that month. So, it conceivably could be very intense, right?
Oh, without a doubt, because other opportunities as the independent artist and instructor you are, I mean, who knows what kind of cool opportunities will come as the month plays out. Not to add more pressure, but
Don't choke.
Totally. Yeah. Commit, make big promises, and then just suffer.
Well, I mean, but that's the thing though. Is like if I don't ship on this, it's like, who am I? I'm accountable to my Patreon subscribers, but like that doesn't mean I can't still ship the thing. I mean, it's like I'm a few days late. If I'm a week late, I'm still making a comic for them, right?
Exactly. I mean, so part of this is an experiment. So what? Okay. So why would you do that? Why is it just machismo? Is it just the ravages of learning addiction playing out? Is it? I'm being a little flippant and jokey here, but like, it's.
So, yeah. No. Good questions. I mean,
but flip it and go like to the opposite. So what if it was just ridiculously doable?
Yeah, I mean, then it proves to
matter?
me that I need to stop fussing so much with my work and trust that I can ship what needs to be shipped. Like, I think a lot of artists, no matter how seasoned you are, like one of the hardest things is to know when it's done. When is the work done? And a great way to, and this is another thing that we talked about in that discussion at A2CAF, which will be dropped in the Galaxy of Super Adventure feed, is I know I am certainly guilty of protecting myself from bad drawings by overworking them, right? Like, oh, if I just put in 3 more hours on this, then I'll know it's good because it baked long enough, right? As if time has anything to do with it, you know? And so like with this, like the Captain Seriously book that I just finished, which I was inking an hour and a half a page, it's like, this looks pretty good, and it was done really fast. Okay, can we push it even further? Can I do it in an hour? And can I do it on paper so I don't have any undos? I can't, no go backs, right? Ship it as is. Live with it.
Which, and again, it is an experiment and what have you that I'm pointing out some of the tension aspects, but then if in the absence of all the tension, so like if it did become completely not challenging, is it still important? Is it still interesting? Is it still something that looks like you would still take it on?
I see. If it was super easy to do, like
would you play this game on easy?
Sure, because I'm making another thing that I want to make, right? I wrote a story that I really like, and I want to see it finished. So there's that motivation is there as well as like sort of a backup plan in case the learning isn't that much, right?
Okay.
There's a multiplicity of motivation, right, to sort of like belt and suspenders this thing so that there's enough reasons for me to push on with it. I guess, yeah, thank you for leading me there. That's a terrific sort of way to land on this final thought is multiple motivations can be a really good thing because it can sort of like safeguard your commitment to it, right?
Right. So if you need to make the next page somehow simpler, or if the overall project becomes so lower, like difficulty doesn't sound like where the meaning is necessarily in this. It's completing a thing.
Yeah. Yeah, but the difficulty is part of the spice of it too, right?
Which is often what's attractive to challenges, where it's like, well, what will I learn? What kind of mistakes am I going to make, and what's going to come out of that?
As long as it doesn't turn into a Metroid Prime 3 mini boss, I'll be happy. As long as it doesn't turn into a thing where it's like you got to do these 5 steps 62 times over and over and over again, and God help you if you screw up on one of those cycles. Like that's when it gets bad. That's when it gets unhappy. I like challenges.
So let's not do poor boss design to ourselves.
Quadraxis, man, Quadraxis. Still got a lot of pent-up hostility about the Quadraxis level in Metroid Prime 3. Anyway.
Good to know.
Don't talk to me about Quadraxis, man. All right. Did we walk around it, Rob? I think we did.
I think we did.
All
that
right.
was a lot of fun. I appreciate you sharing all that about your project, and I will be sure to do the same as I figure out what I'll be tackling.
And links to the places where you can find where to follow along with our season of creative challenges will be in the show notes at leanintoart.com.
Mm-hmm.
So thanks for everybody for watching, listening, downloading, and all the other things. And good luck to all of you on your creative challenges this season. And we'll look forward to watching along with the hashtags. Until then, I have been Jerzy Drozd of leanintoart.com and Jerzy on Twitter.
And I've been Rob Stenzinger of leanintoart.com and Rob Stenzinger on Twitter.
Okay, bye.
Show notes for this episode can be found at leanintoart.com. You can also follow us on Twitter at the user leanintoart, and you can reach us via email at leanintoart@gmail.com. And remember, leaners aren't wieners. Thanks for listening.
Okay, everybody, I'm going to kill the stream. Thanks for hanging out with us.
Yeah, thank you very much.